Sunday bites and tidbits. This life they'll help you live it and get yourself together. Sunday bites and tidbits.
Hey everybody, welcome to. Go ahead, Beth, sing the song.
Sunday bites and tidbits.
It gets kind of worse each week. This week was last week was pretty good. I don't know what that was, but welcome all to the show. We are so excited to have you here. What do you guys? What's going on with you ladies today?
Well, I'm happy today.
Why are you happy today?
My daughter took me to lunch to this restaurant. I am just absolutely in love with this restaurant. It's in Manhattan Beach. It's a Chinese restaurant. Oh my God, never tasted food so delicious. This is the second time she's taken me. So I'm so thrilled. And I'll give you the name of it after we're done. We can post it, but oh my
And
God.
it's vegan.
Food is amazing. Huh?
Obviously, it's vegan.
No, if they have vegan options.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Because I know most of the time you like to eat it vegan because you don't trust the vegan options all the time.
Yeah, but these people are so consistent and the food is so unbelievably delicious. They have these garlic string beans. Oh my God.
I love garlic string beans. Anyway, so what's going on with you?
Well, I have a piggyback off what Babette just said. So I live in Fort Smith, Arkansas. It's a real army fort. Like it was a real army fort where soldiers came. A lot of refugees, a lot of Korean refugees, Vietnamese refugees, from Laos and all the places. So when you Asian food in Fort Smith, Arkansas, it's crazy. I'm regional Asian food. Like we're gonna run out down the street get some Chinese. No, it's like regional. But bet you would lose your mind. It is so, and they just do it right in front of you.
Right in front of you, huh? Oh my God.
It's so good. Tara, you remember that place we took you to called Fuji?
Yeah, the sushi. They had the
okay.
sushi.
Yeah, and they have vegan sushi, sweet potato sushi.
What? No.
Girl,
no.
It's so good. And they only serve it this time of year. That's why Deb got to get some.
Probably because of holiday type of thing.
Holiday, so good. So that's just a shout out to, Asian cuisine.
Asian cuisine.
Well,
what's that?
We can't know. What did you do?
What did I do?
You look like you got bit.
Well, one of my cats was trying to crawl up my jumpsuits in the closet.
No.
I didn't appreciate that. Go figure. So I went to grab her
I'm sorry.
Closet, and she turned around, hooked her claw in my finger, hooked it, and then slid down my hand.
No.
I'm telling you. I sent Mitchell I was crying like I was 5. It was blood. And I wasn't crying as much because it hurt, even though it hecka hurt. I was crying because I was on my way to my first rehearsal.
And you're all bloody now.
But I found some new skin. You know that stuff you paint on? And
yeah, right. You just covered it up.
Yeah, well, but it was not cute.
One of the reasons I have no animals. Well, my week was, let me just share. I have, I go to the food bank to help the vegan food bank every month. And we, she allows us to shop. So I got a bag about this size of lentils. And I don't know why I thought it was the smaller bag. So I cleaned them and I put them all in a crock pot. And I sliced up some carrots and some celery and onions. And I have so much lentil soup. I'm like, lentil soup is coming out of my ears. Because every morning I go, well, just eat some lentil soup for breakfast. Why not lentil soup? I've been eating lentil soup. The thing is full. So now I'm going to start giving some away. But yeah, that's very exciting. That's kind of a pathetic life if you think about it. All I have to talk about is my big crock pot.
Not pathetic at all. Lentils are so healthy, and now you have enough that you can actually put in containers and freeze.
Freeze it. That's what I'm going to do today.
Yes.
After but I'm just saying my life is kind of down to.
Your life sounds amazing to me.
I'm pausing on where you got the lentils.
I know, for free.
No, not that.
Food bank.
Why were you there?
Food bank. Yes, Gwenna has Vegans of LA, and she gives people fresh vegetables, because most food banks have canned goods and a lot of processed food, but she wants to make sure people get healthy fresh foods. And
Real
so I
food,
go down there
not
once a month
products.
to help out, and it's wonderful. But
Nice.
you know what? I just want to get on our guest today, because this gentleman has made some strides in New York, and was a police officer for years. And some of the stuff that we kind of know but don't know, we guess that's going on. He wrote a book about it called The Dirty 30. And I can't wait to hear more about it, because as a woman who has especially sons, or African American kids, I'm always petrified when I hear police stories, and I'd like to know from him, from being on the inside, how valid would my concerns have been if I lived in New York, and how valid are my concerns, period, and him being a father, how did he navigate all that? Please welcome our guest, Leo Lungaro. But he's got another name, and I don't know how to say it, so we're gonna let him say what his full name is.
Okay, Leo Lungaro.
Leo Lungaro.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How are you now? What is your full name, Leo? Is it Leo T or Leo?
You mean my real first name?
Yes.
Liborio.
Liborio.
You gotta say it like an opera singer. Liborio.
Liborio.
There you go. Much better than me.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have you here today, because we are all moms here and grandparents, a couple of them. And Sylvia and I've spent a lot of time in New York, and really kind of brought you here because I wanted to hear more about your journey as a police officer, and also how you specifically navigated being a father, being a husband. How did you inwardly navigate the madness that you saw versus the lifestyle that you were living, and how the safety of your family and other people that you knew and cared about? I know somebody told me it's kind of like being on a plane, where if you have a dad or somebody who's a pilot, they can talk to you about it a different way than somebody who's petrified of flying and thinking every plane's going to fall out of the sky. So for me, being a mom, I'm petrified of police officers, number one, because of what happened to me when I first moved out here. And number two, because when you see them, a lot of times they're always, not all of them, but a lot of them are doing things that are just not right. Tell us a little bit about your journey and your story, and then the book, etc.
Well, for me, I love being a police officer. I come from a family of police officers, my uncles, both of which were homicide detectives. My brothers, one was a homicide detective, the other one was a lieutenant. So taking the police test from the beginning, I always wanted to be a cop. The one big thing in New York City, when I came on in 1979, they were very big into community policing. So from the day I graduated from the police academy, we went out and did a beat. You met the people on the street. You see who you're working for, because really you're working for the community, and it's not the other way around. I don't know what's going on today, if they still follow the community policing methods. But I know back then, in my world, I didn't look at it as madness. I looked at it as every day getting up and going out and helping people. And that was my job, to help. And that's all I cared about. Did I see some ugly things? Well, yeah, I worked in the 34th precinct, the 30th precinct. They had hundreds and hundreds of homicides per year, which is kind of crazy. But I think you have a defense mechanism that comes up that you kind of shut it out. because you didn't do the homicide. I mean, you witnesses the bodies and you see the bad things that happen. But when something like that happens, for me, I look at the senior citizens, I look at the kids, I'll go out my following tour and I'll go to a subway or a bus stop where the kids are getting on the bus to go somewhere. Hi, how you doing? Talk to the kids. I'll talk to the store owners, see how they're doing. And with community policing, you know who the good guys are, and you know who the bad guys are, because you're seeing the good guys every single day, and then all of a sudden you're seeing a certain change on the street corner. You see people, dealing drugs, or they have guns, or they're just abusing, a loved one or something else. So you guys stand in and do your job. And going home, I never took my job home until I worked in the 30th precinct, when you had all that corruption going on where 30 cops got arrested. And for me, the reason why I wrote this book was because, one, I saw, for me, a big miscommunication between the police and the community. And when you have miscommunication, just like any relationship, there's going to be a problem. So I wanted people to read the book to say, hey, even though 30 cops got arrested here, you had 150 cops who were good guys. And what did the good guys do to stand up to the bad guys? How do you go through that anxiety, that stress, that pressure? There was 5 suicides in a matter of 3 years, and I knew them all. That hurts.
Are you saying there were 5 suicides in the police force?
Yep. And that one precinct, the 30th precinct. Yep. And they were all good guys, but the pressure, there was a 4-year investigation, and, they had to be, the 30 guys had to be arrested. There's no doubt about it. They were bad. I mean, I had arguments with sergeants, fist fights with sergeants. I went head to head, nose to nose with a captain. Which is hard to do when you're a sergeant and then you have the authorities, like you yelling at your boss. The only thing I had was the captain was underneath the deputy inspector, and the deputy inspector liked me a lot, because I brought this community together. In the beginning, it was very, very difficult, because they didn't trust me. So I had to gain that trust over 4 or 5 years. And I also had an open door policy. So anybody in the community could come into my office anytime that I was working, and they trusted me. It took a while to gain their trust, but at the end, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because everybody talks about police officers become cynics. When I went to the 30th precinct, believe me, I went kicking and screaming. I did not want to go there. I want to go back to the detective bureau.
And why did they move you from one to the other?
Well, one, I got promoted. So when you get promoted sergeant, you have to go back to a precinct on patrol. And then after, I was supposed to go back to the detective bureau after 6 months. This investigation, which I didn't know what was going on, but I had kind of a clue, because they said, listen, I want to go for my 6 months to 20th precinct, which is the Museum of Natural History, Central Park, a nice place. And then when they told me I was going to the 30th, I was like, okay. And then they told me you're going to be in charge of community policing. That's when I knew I wasn't going back to the detective bureau, because once they put you in command of a unit, you're going to be there for 2 or 3 years. I ended up being there for 8 years. And again, it was probably the best thing that ever happened, because what I was going to mention before was, everybody says that police officers become cynics, over the course of their career. I was blessed, and believe me, it was a blessing that I went to the 30th precinct and I actually got to work with the community, face to face. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened in my life. I loved the community. I loved all the people. In fact, when I was researching this book, I changed the name in the book, this Miss Burnett in the book. And I went around the community, see what was going on, see how it's changed and everything. And then I saw her out front, in front of a brownstone. She was sweeping, her sidewalk. And I kept walking out. Now, you got to remember, this like 10 years later. So I went up, I said, well, I wonder if she remembers me. And let's say my son, I'll feel bad if she doesn't remember me, you know? So I went up to her and her eyes got real big and she goes, "Oh, Sergeant Lungaro." I said, "How you doing?" She goes, "Oh, I'm fine." She goes, "Oh, I missed you so much." I said, "Oh my God." She goes, "You know," I said, how's the streets doing?" And everything. She goes, "Oh, you know what? You promised us change and you gave us change." She goes, "You still have a couple of these idiots over here," you know? And then she gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. And, you know, I drove my car down Riverside having
Oh,
a tear in
that's
my
nice.
eye.
I had a question for you. I loved
Go on.
hearing all of the facets of your career, you know,
Thank you.
officer. So I kind of wanted to go back a little bit.
Sure.
You talked about your dad and your family. What, if you could tell, what was the thing besides the fact that it was part of your family? What was the thing in you that made you say, yeah, this is what I want to do with my life? And I would also like to know about the trajectory of your ranking and what rank you were when you finally left. So those kind of the two-pronged question. I just would love to know the history of kind of how all that happened.
Well, I think, you know, for me, I always wanted to be a police officer. You know, maybe because of Beretta, Starsky and Hutch, all the TV shows, I thought it was pretty cool. You know, my uncles, like I said, they were homicide detectives, but before that, you have to be a patrol officer and everything else. And they would tell me the stories and, you know, again, how they help people and stuff like that. So I was excited, you know, when I took the police test. You know, my uncle gave me, you know, the brochure, and I took the test. I did really well. I was in the first class in probably 5 or 6 years. So yeah, it was it was an exciting moment for me when I went into the police academy. It really was. And again, everything was, when I went to the academy and when I went on the street as police officer, everything was really, they ingrained in you community policing. In fact, I remember one of the instructors would say, you know, be kind to the people on the street, because when you get in trouble, somebody's fighting you, shooting at you, they're the ones that are going to call 911 on the phone and help you. And I think from the start, doing foot patrol, walking the beat, and really talking to people, you see how many people actually like you, which was very important to me, because I was excited to be a cop, and then I was excited to meet people.
Well, for us, we don't know. I mean, my brother wanted to be a police officer. He decided to become a truck driver instead, but we don't know. And then the average person watching this, we don't know kind of what that looks like. You take the exam, and then what happens, and then what happens, and then what happens. How does that go?
Well, yeah, you go, you know, you take the test, and you have to, I was in the first class. You go into the police academy. At the police academy, you do 6 months of field training. So you do another 6 months of, it's like going to college for 6 months, and then 6 months of training, which is hands-on, and you have a field training officer who is a mentor. He teaches you how to do things, how to work, and stuff like that. From there, you go to a permanent command, which I went to the 34th Precinct, which was Washington Heights. From there, I gained a good reputation of being a good cop. I was recommended for narcotics, and I got into Manhattan North Narcotics, so I did undercover work. From there, I got promoted to detective, and then I went to Bronx Robbery Squad, which basically we would do pattern robberies. So somebody had to do 3 or more robberies for our unit to pick it up. And then I took the sergeant's test and got promoted to sergeant, and then ended up in 3-0.
So,
wow, it's amazing.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm probably jumping really far ahead. However, I just wanted to share this. I was born in 1950. My brother was 5 years older than 10 years older than myself. And we were raised on the east side of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Central Avenue, Washington Boulevard. My brother was always in trouble, always in trouble. My mother, however, was block captain. She always had the police in her house. She was one of those, loved, just embrace the police. My brother, however, he said there was not a time that he was ever arrested that he wasn't beaten. Not one time that he was ever arrested that he wasn't beaten or mistreated. So he always took the opportunity to lash out because he knew they were going to slap him around. The last time my brother was beaten by the police, they beat all the teeth out of his head.
Wow.
So I've had a mixed feeling as it pertains to police officers, especially in neighborhoods like South Central where I grew up. I didn't have a lot of trust for police officers. I really didn't. And then I grew up during a time when I wanted to be a Black Panther. And so, you know, I just really had very mixed emotions. I just felt like, and then I grew up with the Watts riot, you know, that kind of thing. And I just always felt like because I was melanated and because I lived in a community that was highly, most of us were Black folks, that police didn't really like us. That's the honest to God truth about the way that I grew up and my thoughts about police officers. Did you find police officers that some of them may have been on that page? Because I realize we're just people passing tests, wearing badges and packing guns. We're humans and we're all different. We all have different ways of thinking. What was your experience like with some of your other folks that you worked with as it pertained to a Black, brown community?
Well, no, that's a fair question. I can't talk about Los Angeles because I was in New York City. All I could say is I always worked in Hispanic and African American communities, and I always got along. I never saw anybody when I worked beat anybody or hit anybody because that's a big no-no. I'm not going, because if I did see that, especially as a boss, I'm going to call internal affairs and have them go to the captain's office and he'll be arrested or whatever it may be. Because again, I'm here to do a good job, help people. And I'm not here to get fired and lose my pension. You know, that's big. So that's the other thing, you know, wherever I worked, and I worked in really, really tough neighborhoods, but you never put your hands on. Now, if somebody, you have to arrest somebody, they're wrestling with you, you wrestling back, of course, you got to put the handcuffs on. So you wrestle. But once the handcuffs come on, you can't, I don't want, one, I don't want to be hit in the face, you know, and two, I would feel so guilty if I hit anybody. I mean, who has, I mean, and again, I can't talk about Los Angeles. I know there was a lot of problems, and I'm certainly there's problems in New York too. But for the majority of the police officers that I worked with, they were good, hardworking, honest men, with the exception of those 30 police officers. And what they were doing, they were stealing money, drugs, and everything else.
So can we, I want to move over to that a little bit because we're going to be out of time before we know it. So what happened when you got to District 30, to precinct number 30, and you discovered, how did that, like how, what? How did it?
Well, it all started because,
34.
like I said earlier, I was supposed to.
30. 30 was where the bad guys were.
Oh, dirty 30.
30. First.
My bad.
Yep.
Hold up the book. Hold up the book.
Let's see the book.
I have my copy here. So that's the 30, the dirty 30. Yes. Okay. So
we want people to buy the book too.
Right. Yeah, we're going to promote it.
It actually went to, a couple months ago, went to #1 on Amazon for law enforcement.
Nice.
So I was happy about that. Yeah.
Yes.
But to answer your question, like I said earlier, I wanted to go to the 20th precinct, and they sent me to the 30th precinct. And I was actually, for 6 minutes, transferred to the 20th precinct. And then a captain and his driver came to my temporary assignment was at the 32nd precinct. So my 6 months were up, and I was supposed to go to the 20th precinct and do 6 months there, and then I was going to go back to the detective bureau. A captain from the 30th precinct shows up to the 32nd precinct with his driver and says, "Come on, we're going for a drive." And he brought me to the 30th precinct. He says, "Oh, you're being transferred here and you're taking over the community policing." And I was like, "No, I'm not." He goes, "Yes, you are." I said, "No, why? Why?" He goes, "I can't tell you." So at that point, I knew something was going on. I didn't know how bad it was. And then what I would do is, if I knew there was certain cops that I didn't trust, and they wouldn't do anything in front of you, but what I would do, I would show up unannounced at jobs. And then there was one sergeant, I caught, they were the conditions team, and I caught two cops inside an apartment, and they said they had a job. And I said, "What job? Tell me what job." And then all of a sudden, sergeant came in, he's arguing with me, I'm arguing with him. And there was, oh my God, I would say a pound of Coke. So I told him, "Put it on the scale right there, and we're going to weigh that." "You go, what?" "No, I'll put it." I said, "No, you're putting it on the scale right there. We're going to weigh it. And when we get back to the precinct, it better be that weight. I'm going to lock you up." So what happened when I was working, they would change their hours. And then I would change my hours just to bust their chops. But then I knew people from internal affairs, I knew there was a big investigation going on. So they were taking care of whatever they had to do, which, they did a good job. Them and the feds, the FBI, locked up 30 police officers.
Wow.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is when I spoke to internal affairs, in the last 2-3 years, I interviewed a lot of good cops and a lot of the dirty cops, because as a writer, I can't judge. I have to know exactly what happened, because once I judge, well, then, I'm falsifying information. So, and they told me everything that was going on. But when I talked to a chief from internal affairs and a detective from internal affairs last year, they told me that what was interesting, 90% of the good cops was calling internal affairs on the bad cops. That's, so when I say blue, what's that, blue wall silence? I'm like, there's no blue wall silence, because nobody wants to get arrested. They don't want to go to jail.
Let me ask you this. Do you find that, and then I want to get back to that story, but do you still have people in the police force in New York who are part of it?
You mean the guys who got arrested?
No, just friends or anyone who's still.
Oh, they're all retired now.
Okay, because I'm curious to see how different things are there now than it was then. Because it feels like a lot of times, and like I can be wrong because I'm only basing it on some of the situations, obviously, that you see on television that has me petrified.
Right.
And, and being a person of color, that the stuff that I just went through, a few times with cops that, and me, I came crying to you one day. I thought I was going to be arrested because I was working for somebody who got arrested. So I was like, are they going to come get me? He's like, "No, they ain't thinking about you." But everything, I'm so nervous about it. I don't want to have anything to do with that side of the world. But it feels to me like a lot of, and maybe a lot is only because I see again, a lot of the police officers feel like so many of them are on the wrong side. We don't get to see as much of the good side of cops. Every now and then somebody will post something because of social media. All we get to see are the cops who are doing dirty, and the cops who are hurting people, and the cops who are shooting guys. And, and then some of my experiences out every day, and even experiences with my sons, coming and carrying groceries into their building and being pulled over. "Do you live here?" It's like, what? We got groceries. We're coming to school. We got our backpacks. It just feels like all the cops now, that everybody's all screwed up. And I'm just wondering, where are the good cops? How come these other people seem to just keep getting away with things?
I know it's a question for you, sir, but I actually have some input about that as well, Tara, that I would like to share after. if you
Okay.
don't.
What are your thoughts on that, Leo?
Well, my thoughts, again, I can only talk about New York City, and I can't, LA, local police and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of problems where I think they're going to have to get stricter in hiring the proper people. Two, the one thing I don't like in New York City, when I go back to New York City, they're all wearing these black uniforms, with police on the back. They're not wearing the dress uniforms like the blue shirts, the uniform pants, dress pants, and stuff like that. I think they have to go back to being professional. They have to look professional. I just don't like that. To me, it looks like they're more security guards than police officers.
When did they change the look? I don't live in New York.
I've been here 15 years, so it had to happen in the last, 15 years or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like that look. I think they have to be stricter on hiring.
But when they're stricter on hiring, as in what? What should they be looking for that they haven't been?
Education, some college education, doing proper investigations, talking to, like when I came on, they talked to my neighbors, they went to my job, they did background search and everything else. I don't know if they're still doing that, but I think I have a bachelor's degree and I put myself through college. My mom and father didn't have that much money, so I had to, like a lot of people, I had to do it myself. And I just, I can only talk when I came on in my 20 years of service, is everybody, you had a lot of veterans, that's disciplined, they're in the military.
Yes.
Right? They're good. So they always got like 2 or 3 extra points, which they deserve to come on the police department. I had my police test, I had 100 on the test. And everybody who took the test, you had to get 96 or better.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is anymore, but I know everybody who came on. Okay, for instance, when I took my police test, 75,000 people took the police test. 75,000. Now they can't get 2,000 people to take a police test.
Really?
And that's
3,000. Yeah.
probably why they're just grabbing people, and they might have lowered the scale.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I think again, you have to have community policing. If you don't have community policing, well, then you're going to have miscommunication the whole time. The police in the community have to talk, like, and if you see something bad on the street, now you can tell a cop, hey, listen, somebody smacked this, kid or something like that, but you trust the cop, and now the cop's going to notify, the captain of internal affairs. So it comes down to trust. But yeah, I think, they got to the police department has to get better with the PR.
Yeah.
Say the good things. If somebody does something bad, well, fire them. That's it. You're helping all the police officers by firing them because you have one bad apple.
Yeah, and it's not just the police, it's the media. I mean, it's their job to divide us. Because you can keep us divided and keep us with an us and them mentality. Then you can break down the system. Weakening the system gives those who want that power the power, because we're divided. Okay, so this is what I was going to say. And I'm excited to share this because we talk about wellness on this podcast. So I'm excited about this. So I told you I have a friend. Her name is Jen Lackard. Jen Lackard she's a Black woman. She is the country's first Deputy Commissioner for Special Initiatives in Mount Vernon.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, I know Mount Vernon.
Deb, or Tara, you're going to love this. She oversees the development of strategies for police reform, behavioral health, and wellness.
Wow.
For both the officers and the community. Nice. Policies, procedures, and implementation of the new Civilian Complaint Review Board and the reentry support for formerly incarcerated persons. And they've also implemented something called the KQ. It's a kindness quotient kind of exam thing that you take the way you would take an IQ test, and the police are taking it, and it's become kind of a thing. But that's happening in Mount Vernon, New York right now.
Wow.
And that's a big deal for me. To me, that's a big
Very
deal.
big deal.
That is a big deal.
But look at this. It says, I was just pulled this up. It says, to pass the personal qualification for police test, a score of 70 if applying for the Los Angeles Police Department. 70 is the score that you have to pass. So, and it says, and if you fail, you can retake the test in 6 months.
Wow.
What was your retake ratio to when you failed? Do you remember, Leo?
You had to get a 95 or better. Otherwise, you have to take
when could you retake the test?
Oh, well, the test is like every 1 to 2 years, so you won't have to worry about 6 months. I don't know how they do it now, but back
that's
then.
what it's saying here. You can retake the test in 6 months.
But that's LA.
That's
right. Yeah.
And
right.
I mean,
and what we're talking about here is in New York, so I'm excited about that too. I want Leo, I want you to know about that because she's somebody you should probably know anyway. But wellness, is a wellness component in the police department.
But I still want to go back to the book again, because what is amazing to me that weren't you a little nervous like that writing this book?
I know.
You know, because you were not concerned, or is it that everyone was retired and even if they wanted to come after you, they couldn't?
No, I mean, I knew everybody personally.
Even the dirty 30 people?
Well, yeah, I went head to head with them. I was fighting with them every day. But originally, when I first came out here with my daughter Amanda, I wrote a pilot and a feature film before I wrote the book. And then when I decided to write the book, pandemic, I said, you know what, let me try and write a book. Let me see what happens. But again, I said, I can't judge, so I have to start reaching out to these dirty cops. So I reached out to the dirty cops, and I wanted to know why they did it and how it happened. And that's another thing I wanted to put in the book, why and how. So other cops, young cops, know if they have a boss that's trying to lead them down the wrong path, that they can say no. You know, there are other options. And one of the biggest problems were the sergeant, who I went head to head a lot. He would take these rookies and work their own hours. So they weren't working with the regular patrol officers or anything else like that. For instance, if it's a fresh platoon, let's say day tours, or doing 7 to 3s, and then my team's doing 10 to 6s, he would have his team do 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 10. So and he'll take them out on their own, so they're not really going with the veteran officers or other things. And now the sergeants tell them to do one thing, and now they do one thing. Now all of a sudden, oh, I got you. So now you have to continue doing this. And it just kind of snowballed with some of these younger cops. And
I'm sorry, I'm a little lost. So the sergeant was corrupt.
Oh yeah, he got arrested.
And so so then he would take these veterans, and now once they do it one time, he's
rookies.
No, the rookies.
Sorry, the rookies. Sorry,
Yeah.
he would take the rookies, and once he gets them to do something one time, they're stuck.
Right. And it snowballed.
Right.
Yeah.
The culture of fear supported that. It didn't even have to be a direct threat. You just knew that you do this, and now I got you. So now,
and they were 30. That's a huge number. Yes, that 30. Like. So, what kind of things are we talking about? Like, besides drugs or maybe stealing money, what?
That's what they were doing.
That's what they were doing.
They're like drug dealers, and they'll find out where a stash house was, and they'll kick in the door, take the money and the drugs, and sell the drugs, and it's
so they basically were just drug dealers with uniforms.
Yep.
Can I segue to something kind of completely off, but kind of on? You mentioned that you've written a pilot. and a feature. And obviously you're out, you're in LA and you're very familiar with that world. Do you do any consulting work on films or series or procedurals to make sure they're getting it right when it comes to the way they portray the police?
No. I
Oh,
even asked.
You probably, because you know it from so many years and from inside, outside, all you know it from so many different places. It seems that would be something that you would be a great resource for, to make sure something was accurate.
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I'm more interested in getting a television series or a feature film out. That's the reason why I wrote the book. And right now I'm writing, believe it or not, I'm writing a prequel to the 3-0.
Wow.
That's good.
Because when I interviewed everybody, internal affairs, feds, detectives, cops, and everything else, I actually found out how the whole investigation started.
Wow.
And the reason why I went to the 3-0. I didn't find this out until I talked to the chief last year. He goes, Leo, remember that case in Robbery Squad with the 13 impersonation robberies? I said, yeah. I said, that was my case. He goes, yeah, that's how it all started.
Wow.
I said, you serious?
Wow.
That made sense why they put me to the 3-0. I didn't find out till a year ago, though.
Yeah, because you said that when he picked you up at the 2-4 or the 2-0, that he
3-2.
said, "Come on, you'll know when you get there."
Wow.
Then you got there, and so he specifically handpicked you because he knew that you are the type of guy. You're a good guy. You're a clean guy, and you're not gonna let it slip under the rug.
Nope. And the other thing that amazed me too is a lot of the good cops from the 3-0 who are now retired, 10 of them came forward and told me that they were actual undercover informants for the internal affairs and the feds. And I'm like, oh my God. So if anybody was doing something bad, you were getting caught. You were getting caught.
Wow. That's amazing. That's
wow.
So then what did they need you for?
Oh, that's funny. How did you navigate that in your head, though, Leo? You seem like a man with a lot of joy, and you mentioned the word kindness earlier. That's a big deal. I love that word. I love kindness, but you mentioned that, and so how did you navigate just keeping your head and your heart right? Not just while you were going through it, but stuff like that leaves residue.
Well,
how do you and how did you navigate that?
Well, again, the most important thing for me, being a boss at the 30th Precinct, is to protect my men and women, my team. First and foremost, I wouldn't let them go near any of the dirty cops or the sergeants or anybody else. I protected them. The second thing was the community. I had to protect the community. And I'll give you a perfect example. The ministers of Harlem, okay, when all the police officers got arrested, the 30 of them, Reverend Ruth O'Neill, actually I got the plaque right up there, came with 2 busloads of children from the local school, and they all made handwritten thank you cards. Oh. So instead of coming to the precinct, having a riot and everything else, they came in, and her and the ministers of Harlem came in and gave us these thank you cards and gave me a plaque, a trophy, and really nice. And that was a touching moment. It was a touching moment.
So that community, I always liked you too. I knew you were a good guy.
I like you too. But I think that's because not just me, but my team and most of the cops, the good cops in the 3-0, were able to gain the community's trust that they knew who we were. There was no miscommunication. And I think that's the biggest thing about my book. And I think the biggest problem with policing today, in my mind, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it's miscommunication. And I think everybody has to get back on the same page and work a little harder. And the police works for the community. The community doesn't work for the police. And I think that's hopefully that answers your questions.
Yeah, no, what you said was, you talked about that moment, what the children did. They
Yeah.
express kindness toward you. And it's the funny thing about that is that when they did that for you, it activated that feeling in you, you know, the oxytocin and the dopamine and the endorphins and all that good feeling. And it's funny because if somebody, when you shared that with someone, just when you shared it with us, felt it too.
Yes.
And that's what happens with you talked about that. If you're kind to these folks, not nice, but kind to them, if you need them, which you will if you're out there on the street as a police officer, they're going to remember that kindness.
Yep.
They're going to remember that they could trust you and you made them feel safe. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So yes, you did answer the question.
Yeah. And a lot of people I went through, believe it or not, during this whole thing, panic attacks. So I remember one time I was behind my desk and I was upset because the dirty sergeant tried to grab one of my officers and I flipped out. And then I talked to my officer. I said, listen, I don't care. You call me. If I'm home, you call me. I don't care. I'll come in. You do not go out with that guy. I don't care if it's an order, whatever. And I just remember my whole office started spinning and spinning. And then and I didn't want my team to see me weak. So I was hugging the walls, getting back to the locker room, into the bathroom, just so I could sit and, breathe, like I've cupped my hands like this, So a lot of people went through panic attacks during this time.
And what was the panic of that something was going to happen to people? Because that's my,
No, I think everything was just collapsing. And, and the other thing too is you want to help everybody. You want to help everybody. And there's only so much time in a day, that you could be doing things and everything else. So now, not only am I trying to protect my team and the good officers, 150 other officers in the precinct who are good, I also want to protect the community, away from, these dirty cops and everything else, even though they were more into the drugs and the guns and everything else. It just, your mind just, it adds up over a course of time.
How did you deal with it? How did you deal with the panic attacks? And how did you do? You said there were several people who were experiencing that. How did you get yourself back?
Medication.
Okay. Wow.
Medication.
Yeah. Amazing. That's good.
Yeah, it was scary. Am I having a heart attack or am I having a brain tumor or something like that? It was freaky,
Did it ever, the fear, because you being a family man and a loving husband, been with your wife, Wendy, for years, and you have 3 beautiful kids, it never spilled over to your concern for your children?
No, I think every police officer knows the job, and it could be dangerous. And our job is to protect people, so when somebody's firing a gun, we can't run the other way. We have to go towards that gun because not only, I'm protecting people on the street, the community, but I'm also protecting other police officers from being hurt. So did I ever think about, I've been cut, I've been stabbed, but do I ever think about I'm not coming home today? I don't think, and I think most police officers like that. You can't live in fear. If you live in fear, then you can't you're not going to do your job.
Well, I'm not even talking about you living in fear for you. I'm saying as a parent, because when you see, well, let me put it back on me. When I see so much of this going on with, police in the world and the violence, probably because I have a very hard time separating, it's not very good for me to be able to, because then all I do is worry about every time my sons leave or my daughter leaves the house. Because you know how to train yourself, and then, but your kids may not. And because of seeing so much corruption and seeing so much violence on a regular basis, it never concerned you with your kids. And if it did, how did you navigate that?
I think it depends where you live and where you brought up and the media. I didn't, once I became a cop, I didn't live in the city. I lived in the suburbs. So it's a lot different. It's not like everybody's on top of each other. And you got to remember also, back in the day, you didn't have the social media that you have today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's big. So I just tell my kids, I mean, if they were brought up in Washington Heights or, somewhere in the city, yeah, I'd probably have some concerns with everything going on today, and the other thing too is when I worked, again, everything was ingrained with community policing. So even in Washington Heights, everybody knew their beat officer, so like my wife, Wendy, she knew the local police officer, Sal. He would walk the beat, talk to everybody and everything else. So they were more comfortable. But I think, yeah, I'd probably be, if my kids were brought up in the city, I think I would probably be a little more concerned.
So now that your kids are here in LA, and even though they're not kids, they're still, they're young adults for the most part. Concerned with seeing the LA police officers with your children, or like I was saying earlier, do you have a certain sense of comfort because like the pilot of a plane has different understanding of that world than the average person, who's riding?
Well, yeah, I mean, my oldest son got stopped and his friends 2 or 3 times in I want to say Sherman Oaks, I want to say. And I just, I tell them, I say, just be respectful, don't argue, and leave it at that. If they disrespect you, let me know, and I'll take a ride to, the local precinct and have a conversation with them. Yeah, so no, I mean, again, I think it's also, Matthew's the same age as your 2, and but no, I don't, but I think maybe my background. I think it's because of my background. Yeah.
I want to speak to something Babette said earlier about kind of the not opposing forces, but the 2 different kinds of ways of seeing police from her mom's perspective and her brother's perspective. And I have a very interesting perspective as well. I have been harassed once in Illinois at a mall. I was snatched. I was 13, and I was snatched out of the middle of the mall. I was just walking around shopping. My whole family was there. My parents let us separate with our little money and go buy our own things. And so before, cell phones weren't the way they are now. Right. So they snatched me, put me in a room. I was 13. They put me in a room and they start screaming at me and swearing at me and calling me N-word and B-word and all these things. And they just went in on me. The reason they did it was because some woman had just robbed a jewelry store and they had determined that I was that woman. I was 13.
You're 13.
And so it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. It imprinted on me in a way that is difficult to describe. It was because there was one Black one and one white one, and they were just screaming and yelling. Now the Black guy wasn't calling me names, but he was rough with me. Finally I said, I kept saying, can I call my mom? Can I call my mom? Can I call my mom? And so I don't know if they paged them or whatever, that they wouldn't let them see me. And after in my 13-year-old brain, this was a really long time, but it probably might have been 30 minutes. They literally opened the door and pushed me out the door. And come to find out, the woman they were looking for was like, back then, this was a grown up to me. She was like a 30-year-old white woman. And they never apologized and they never said anything or did anything. Well, my parents are very proactive. My mother was an educator. And my father owned a construction company. And they were proactive. So they went after him. Conversely, my youngest son, I'll go very quickly, everybody knows that my youngest is on the spectrum. But he doesn't look like he's on the spectrum. He got lost one day, had wandered off, and this young white police officer in Georgia found him, walked him, brought him back to the house, cared for him, loved him, and took care of him, and brought him back to me. So still I have very, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very, you know what I mean? And so, Babette, I totally feel you because my brothers have pulled over many, many, many times driving the nice car daddy bought them in the wrong neighborhood.
Right.
And, you know, but you have both, you know what I mean? So I still appreciate you being here and your perspective. I'll stop talking now, but I just wanted to.
But that's what the book is about, Dirty 30. So you got all these great cops
Yep.
that's doing their job, protecting and caring for the community. And then you got the Dirty 30 that's just like, whatever, you know. So yeah, we get it. It's just, they're just people.
Yeah.
And before we wind down and ask you, you know, so you
We
can
gotta stop.
Yeah, we got to stop because we only have 30 minutes. But the other thing was that these guys probably came in, like you said, to do a good job, these rookies. And because they were with one corrupt person, figured out how to manipulate them, you know, and get them caught up. So now they don't know what to do to get out. And there's so many situations like that where you prey on the weak or you prey on the non-knowing. And it takes people like you, Leo, and that's why they stuck you there. They were like, put Leo in there. He don't back down. He was yelling at his superiors. He's not going to back down from anyone, and he's going to clean this up. It takes people like you, and you know, we hope that others are out there who will not just sit back and watch. You know, there's a big case going on at this moment. We all know that's all over the news of, you know, with the rapper gentleman and all the people who watched, you know, all the people who were part of it and I'm too afraid to say something. So it's, you know, and I can't say if I was in that situation what I would do. But I think because you were there and you knew and you saw and you were bigger than, it was important to you to be better, that it made a big difference in them getting caught. And so I applaud you. I mean,
thank you.
It's very nerve-wracking to be that person, but you were. So what we know that you have the prequel to that book. When is that due? When is that coming out?
Hopefully in the near future, maybe 2 months, 3 months.
Oh, that near.
Yeah.
You know, the near future, a year, 3 years, I don't know.
No, not 3
So
years.
Leo, you've written these 2 books and all these other things. If you had to write a book about your life, if it was just about this last week, whatever your life was this week, last month, or your last year, the previous year, what would the name of a book be if it were just a book about Leo and what Leo's life has been in the last year or 2 years or 2 months?
Well, the thing that comes to right away is kindness.
Oh, that is like the best.
Yay!
That's nice.
Leo, I'm going to introduce you to Jennifer, Jen Lackert out there in New York, where you guys need to know each other.
Okay, great.
That's exciting.
Well,
But I just have one last thing to say. You know, when you talk about where people are and how they can get sucked into something, there was a time I smoked crack cocaine. You couldn't pay me to do that today. So it's where we are, you know, consciously where we are. Wow. Right. Very nice.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for changing the community in New York and thank you for sharing your time with us. And guys, make sure you go out, and I'm going to put the book in here so you can go out and get the book and a link to it. And, you know, and be on the lookout for his next book, because then you can kind of read this one and go see, now, how did all this happen?
Right.
Yeah, because it's so important that we see, you know, sometimes the people who do bad things, where they came from and what happened to them. We can have a certain amount of empathy for them, possibly. But anyway, we want to thank you for tuning in, and thank you for joining us. And as we always say before we go, and we want you to join in too, nobody can do you better than you.
So thank you.
Nobody can do you better than you.
Nobody can do you better than you.
Go ahead, mister.
Oh, me? I have to remember that?
Right. That's right.
I have to remember that.
Nobody can do you better than you.
Nobody can do you better than you.
There you go.
Close.
You got it.
That's right. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And make sure you follow us and follow Leo and support his book. Go out and get it and be a part of sharing kindness in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, have a great day.